Hi everyone, it's Professor Dimitri, of course. Welcome to another short video that is tailor-made for this LCA class. Today I want to talk about editing writing. It's a very important topic because I'm not sure that all of you have ever had somebody talk to you about what an effective editing process is. But in addition to that, I think this discussion is important because the best writing doesn't happen when you just bang out an initial draft of a paper. The best writing happens when you edit that piece of writing. So one difference you may notice from writing papers in this course is this isn't going to be like some undergraduate courses you may have taken where you can pull an all-nighter and write something out and not worry about going back over it very closely and turning it in and getting a good grade. That isn't going to happen in here. That's just the way things go. And this is going to translate to law practice too. When you're a lawyer, you're not going to produce your best work just writing something out, typing something out on your computer, and then submitting it to a court or to another lawyer who's your reader. You have to edit. So let's talk about some things that are going to, I think, help you edit more effectively. These are based on experience that I have. The tips are also based on science, too. So we're going to go through each one of these tips individually. Let me just pull them all up here for you. We're going to talk about 6 topics. The first is giving your brain what it likes, which is paper. Second is remembering to breathe. Third is monotasking. Fourth is speaking up. Fifth is creating the best environment for editing. And 6 is phoning a friend. So let's go to number 1. So reading text on screen is slower and more difficult for readers than reading text on paper. Indeed, screen readers tend to skim text rather than deeply read the text, which means they're more likely to miss errors in the text. So before you edit a draft, I recommend that you print it out and edit the print version of the draft rather than editing on screen. So while this may seem like a pain in the butt, it's actually going to make you more effective. This is a point that's actually supported by science. There have been plenty of scientific studies done about how readers read, and reading on paper allows you to focus better than reading on a screen. So edit on paper, not on screen. Point number 2 is remember to breathe. So what do I mean by this? Don't edit your draft immediately after you've written it. And that's because our brains tend to fool us when we edit a piece of our own writing. What happens is that our brains will read things into the text that aren't there, and that's because we've written it. Our brain knows what's supposed to be there, and therefore our brain will tend to gloss over errors. It's like you have a pair of blinders on that prevents you from catching all the errors that you can. So I recommend this, that after you write your initial draft, you set it aside. And you take some time away from it to go do other things. Ideally, that amount of time is going to be a day or a couple days. But at least give yourself a couple of hours after you write a draft before you come back to it. I can't tell you the number of times that I have written something, set it aside for a day or two and come back to it and then looked at it and think, what was I doing here in this draft? So by doing that, you're going to give your brain a chance to reboot and be able to catch those errors. In other words, you're removing the blinders from your eyes, and you're giving yourself a better chance to focus more finely on your draft. So that's point number 2. Point number 3 is monotasking. And this advice is actually going to apply to another point that will be coming up. But what do I mean by this? When you edit, I recommend that you perform at least 3 focused edits. What do I mean by that? Well, when I say focused, I mean you should concentrate on only one facet of your draft each time you edit it. This will allow you to edit your draft more efficiently than if you're trying to address multiple issues in an edit. So let me give you a more concrete example. So during your first edit of the draft, focus only on the substance of what's in your paper. Ask yourself as you're reading your draft whether you're saying everything that you need to say substantively and whether you're saying it accurately. Okay, that's edit number 1. Then you can make your changes with substance. Edit number 2 then will be where you focus only on your writing mechanics. So you're going to be focusing on examining each sentence one by one very carefully, asking yourself, am I using correct grammar? Am I using correct punctuation? Am I using words properly? Is my tone appropriate for the type of reader I'm writing to? Those sorts of questions where you just focus on the actual writing. That's all you're going to focus on. And then when you notice changes you have to make just to your writing mechanics, make those changes. Then come back for your third edit. Now, this third edit won't be as important now as it will be in future papers. But third edit, I would recommend that you focus only on your legal citations that you're putting in your document, where you're checking each citation, making sure each citation is placed in the appropriate place, that your citations, you've provided them when they're required, and also looking to see whether your citations are in the correct form according to the Allwood Guide, and whether your citations are accurate. Are you, for example, citing the correct page number of a case, or are you citing the correct section number of a statute? So where monotasking comes into play here is what you're doing is you're avoiding multitasking through these focused edits. You're focusing only on one thing at a time rather than multiple things. I think you'll find that if you do this, it may take you a little bit longer, but your edits will be more effective. So point number 4 is speaking up. This may sound silly, but one thing you might try doing is reading your draft aloud as you edit it. For some reason, some people tend to learn better by listening. And therefore, these sorts of people, when they listen to themselves read a draft, may be more likely to catch errors in the draft or catch things that are missing. So you might be one of those people. If you're one of those people, I think you'll find that reading aloud may be helpful. So you might try that. Number 5 is creating the best environment for your edits, which means minimizing distraction. Again, this is where monotasking instead of multitasking comes into play. So, like you guys, I am easily distracted when I'm reading something. We've already talked about this before, actually, when we talk about law-trained readers easily distracted. My phone's sitting next to me. It starts buzzing with text notifications. I have my email open and email notifications are coming through. And sometimes when I'm in the office, I'll listen to music. I'll turn on Spotify and fire up some tunes I like. But the thing with that is all of those avenues provide you with ready-made distractions. So here's what I do when I edit. First of all, I try to go to a quiet room. I know that some of you are like, I need noise to concentrate. You might just try being in a quiet environment once to see if that works for you. So I go to a quiet room. I log off of my email, get off email. I shut off my phone. I get off the internet, so I'm not tempted to go on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram. Or and I, by shutting off my phone, I'm preventing people from Snapchatting me and all that stuff. So so I try to get rid of all the distractions. So all I'm doing is just one job, editing my work. All right. Now, and I bring this up because, again, scientific studies have shown that multitasking is something that all people are capable of. You can do several tasks at one time. But what happens is that you become less efficient at each one of those tasks because your brain is having to divide those tasks and compartmentalize them. And it's more difficult for your brain to do that than just to do one thing at a time. So at least for the purposes of editing, you might try shutting off your phone, shutting off your email, turning off the internet, making sure that all the distractions that might be there to lead you away from your job are not there. And one more thing about these distractions. Again, and this is scientific stuff, every time you get distracted away from a task like this where you're editing, it takes you longer when you come back to it to refocus yourself. So each time you're distracted, it takes longer each time for you to get back into it. So just keep that in mind. By monotasking instead of multitasking, you'll be more efficient. You'll get the job done more quickly. Last tip is, well, I call it phone a friend. Most of you have probably seen, or some of you have probably seen, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, the game show on TV. And all the contestants can use lifelines if they're stumped on a question they get asked, and one of those is phone a friend. So I like to think of having another reader looking at my draft as phoning a friend. I'm asking somebody to help me out in spotting things in my draft that I might not be able to see. As I already mentioned, our brains tend to gloss over errors we make in our own writing. But somebody with a fresh set of eyes can help you identify those sorts of errors. So now, make sure you check the course policies, because the course policies prohibit certain people from reviewing your drafts, and nobody can edit your draft, like red line stuff and write in suggestions and things like that. That you can only do. But people can read your writing. And again, the course policies tell you who can do that. But get an outside reader to take a look at your drafts. And maybe that person might point out to you some things that are wrong with it. So for example, later in the semester, tutors from the Dean's Tutorial Society are going to be available to you to read your papers and check your writing mechanics before you hand your papers in. They're the perfect people to focus on with just writing mechanics stuff in a draft, and having them read that draft and then give you writing mechanics suggestions. As for substance, I always schedule conferences before papers are due, except the first paper, discussion 1. So take advantage of that opportunity. I usually will give you the opportunity to come in for a draft review where we can talk about the substance of your draft. I can read over your draft there in real time and point out to you things that concern me or things that are missing that you might want to incorporate. Now, I'm not going to tell you exactly what's missing. I won't say you need to write X, Y, and Z, but I will tell you there's a gap here. I'm confused as to why you haven't talked about this particular thing. Maybe you ought to think about how you can make that clear. So make sure you take advantage of that when you can. And in closing, I just want to say that, as I emphasized at the beginning, editing is the most important part of the writing process. And on the topic of asking somebody else to read your paper, you need to be very careful who you choose to do that. As I already mentioned, the course policies prohibit you from asking certain other people to read your papers. One of those is other people who are working on the same paper. So your classmates, you cannot ask to review a draft for you. But the other thing you need to keep in mind is that, particularly for readers who are not law-trained readers, they may give you bad advice if they review a draft. So for writing style and writing mechanics, I and the DTS tutors, the Dean's Tutorial Society tutors, are always the best people to come and talk to about those topics. The DTS tutors for writing mechanics, and me for writing mechanics and substance. Okay, I hope you found this helpful, and I'll see you later.